I thank the gentleman from Michigan for yielding us the remainder of his time. I want to thank you for the opportunity for the members of the Congressional Black Caucus to speak out on this important bill. Right now, we have the honor for 2 minutes. I will be yielding to the Honorable Whip, Steny Hoyer, the gentleman from Maryland.
The gentleman from Maryland is recognized for 2 minutes.
I say to my friend from Michigan, today we're all members of the Congressional Black Caucus. One people with one commitment and one idea. Mr. Speaker, I rise in strong support of this bill, of which I am a co-sponsor, honoring the brave men and women who marched in Selma. This will be my 10th year participating in the Faith and Politics pilgrimage to Selma with my friend John Lewis. And I thank the gentlelady from Selma for leading this debate. Those folks who marched across that bridge on March 7th, known as Bloody Sunday, were met with the power of the state to prevent them from voting. This gold medal would be a tribute to John and to all those who marched alongside him, and all those who marched along 2 weeks later, Martin Luther King Jr. Those thousands who walked that 5-day journey from Selma to Montgomery. We ought to pass it unanimously. I hope we will. But Martin Luther King Jr. would not be happy with us if we just looked back in awe and reverence and did not look at today, I tell my friend from Michigan. For he would say that Congress should go further than simply honoring those who fought for their rights a half a century ago. We should pay tribute to their sacrifices and the scars they still carry by restoring the full protections of the Voting Rights Act, which the Supreme Court weakened in 2013. Martin Luther King Jr. was about principle, but he was also about assuring that protections would be in place. I hope that this House will allow bipartisan legislation to restore these protections, which are co-sponsored by Jim Sensenbrenner, former chairman of the Judiciary Committee on the Republican side, and John Lewis, the hero of Selma. These protections should move expeditiously through the House once it's introduced. Again, I thank the gentlelady. I have an additional minute.
Gentleman from Maryland is recognized for an additional minute.
I thank the gentleman for giving her a minute to yield to me. I thank Representative Sewell for her leadership in making sure Congress honors those who shook the conscience of our nation through their courageous actions in Selma 50 years ago, and in so many other places where many fought. Some were badly injured, and yes, some died, to redeem the promises of America, that all of us are created equal, endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights, and certainly in a democracy, one of the most important, if not the most important rights that we have is to vote, to select our representatives, to select the policies under which we will live. I thank the Speaker and Majority Leader for getting behind this effort. And again, thank the gentlelady from Selma. How proud she must be of her hometown and of the history that was made there, not just for African Americans, but for all Americans. And I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman's time has expired. The gentlewoman from Alabama reserves. The gentleman from Michigan is recognized.
I reserve at this moment.
Gentleman from Michigan reserves. Gentlewoman from Alabama is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, how many more minutes do we have remaining?
The gentlewoman from Alabama has 12.5 minutes remaining.
At this time, I'd like to yield to Ms. Beatty, the gentlelady from Ohio.
Gentlewoman from Ohio is
1 minute.
For 1 minute.
Thank you, Congresswoman Sewell. Mr. Speaker, I rise today to support and join Congresswoman Terry Sewell, my good friend, and my good friend Congresswoman Martha Roby in strong support of H.R. 431, a bill to award a Congressional Gold Medal to the foot soldiers who participated in the Selma Freedom Marches in March of 1965. These foot soldiers, including our colleague Congressman John Lewis, and the men, women, and children who marched on Bloody Sunday, Turnaround Tuesday, and the final march from Selma to Montgomery, were met with attacks and dogs, beatings, and deaths along the way. But, Mr. Speaker, still they marched, as many of us will march in a few weeks to fight for equal rights and voting rights. Mr. Speaker, let us honor the 1965 foot soldiers for their bravery and for their equality, marching for equality. Mr. Speaker, I urge all members to vote yes on H.R. 431, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman from Ohio yields back the balance for time. Gentlewoman from Alabama reserves. Gentleman from Michigan is recognized.
I reserve the
Gentleman from
balance of my
Michigan
time.
reserves. Gentlewoman from Alabama is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 3 minutes to the gentlelady from Texas, Ms. Jackson Lee.
Gentlewoman from Texas is recognized for 3 minutes.
I thank the gentlelady from Alabama, and I thank her particularly for her persistent leadership and for her generosity with inviting so many members to her district. We've enjoyed meeting her local officials, and we've enjoyed meeting the leadership of this great city and its great history. And we make a personal commitment to her that as we travel through Selma, and it captures the essence of a town of great history, that we recognize that there is a need to invest many dollars to preserve this great city and to preserve its history. And we thank her for her leadership. To the manager, gentleman from Michigan, let me thank you so very much for your eloquent statements. And as well, isn't it important, Mr. Speaker, to see the number of leaders of our leadership, the majority leader, the minority leader, the whip, minority whip, here on the floor of the House joining us in this momentous occasion. I had the privilege of working for the Southern Christian Leadership Council, obviously at a very, very young age. It was in that atmosphere, out of their office on Auburn Street in Georgia, and that I got the sense and the feeling of the moment of the history of Selma. As we're reminded in the fictional movie, but yet truthful, of the movie Selma, we're reminded of the song Glory. Today is an example of glory. It is an example of the coming together of peoples around what is right. And it is a recognition that foot soldiers, though unknown, even some 50 years later, are deserving of pulling them from the ashes of their last words to be able to say to them, thank you. That is what this Congressional Gold Medal means to me and means to so many who were among the 600 plus that could be called the foot soldiers. Obviously, by working for the Southern Christian Leadership Congress and Council, I knew at that time Ambassador Andrew Young, Hosea Williams, James Orange, and a litany of others. And certainly, as our Congresswoman from Selma has done, we pay tribute to our leader, John Lewis, who himself was brutalized as he attempted to exercise a simple right protected by the Bill of Rights, and that is the right to freedom of speech, freedom of access, freedom of movement. And so today, Mr. Speaker, I join in the words of President Johnson on March 15, 1965, looking back over Bloody Sunday. I speak tonight, as he said, for the dignity of man and the destiny of democracy. At times, history and fate meet at a single time in a single place to shape a turning point in man's unending search for freedom. So it was at Lexington and Concord, so it was a century ago at Appomattox, and so it was last week in Selma, Alabama. Yes, it was simply just last week in the thinking of so many of us as we stand on the floor of the House. Might I have 15 seconds?
Yes, 15 seconds. I yield.
Gentlewoman is recognized for an additional 15 seconds.
Thank you so very much. Might I say, as we vote on this, we vote together. And might I say, can we do as much as we vote? Can we do it in action? and vote to reauthorize the Voting Rights Act by simply restoring Section 5, giving the Supreme Court what it needs, but recognizing the importance of protecting the right to vote. In the name of Jimmy Lee Jackson, who died trying to protect his mother and grandmother, in the name of Viola Liuzzo, in the name of Reverend James Reed, I ask that we stand here today
Gentlewoman's time has expired.
and vote for this legislation to honor them, but vote for the reauthorization of the
Gentlewoman's
Voting
time has
Rights Act. I
expired.
yield
Gentlewoman
back.
from Alabama reserves. Gentleman from Michigan is recognized.
I reserve at this time.
Gentleman from Michigan reserves. Gentlewoman from Alabama is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 1 minute to the gentlelady from New Jersey, Mrs. Watson-Coleman.
The gentlewoman from New Jersey is recognized for
Thank
1
you very
minute.
much, Mr. Speaker. And I want to thank the gentlelady from Alabama for bringing us together around this important issue. It's my honor to be a co-sponsor of this endeavor to take this opportunity to demonstrate our appreciation and our respect for the sacrifices that were made by the foot soldiers who marched in those 3 marches. And it is my honor always to be a part of this wonderful body that serves along with with John Lewis, who happens to be one of my personal heroes. You know, this Congressional Gold Medal is just not simply an award. It's emblematic of a selflessness that was demonstrated by people who stood up and did the right thing and put their lives in jeopardy to ensure that we as a democracy had an opportunity to participate at the very highest level, and that is the level of voting. And so as I stand here and thank each and every one of our colleagues on both sides of the aisle for supporting this initiative, I rise also to remind us that we have work to be done, that the battle that was before us that we thought we won is still there to be won, and that we need to correct the actions of the Supreme Court and follow through on the actions of giving people the right to vote. Thank you so much, Mr.
Gentlewoman's
Speaker.
time has expired. Gentlewoman from Alabama reserves. Gentleman from Michigan is recognized.
I reserve the balance of
Gentleman
my time
from
at this
Michigan
point.
reserves. Gentlewoman from Alabama is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. Fattah.
Gentleman from Pennsylvania is recognized for 2 minutes.
I thank the gentlelady from Alabama and those others who co-sponsored this, including Congresswoman Roby from Alabama. This legislation is so vitally important. I take it as one of my life's greatest honors to have served for the last 20 years in the Congress with John Lewis. He literally changed our nation through his bravery. And on a day like today, this is the date that 25 years ago Nelson Mandela walked out of prison and into the presidency in South Africa. And as those foot soldiers walked across this bridge on Bloody Sunday, they helped create a circumstance in which we would have as a President of the United States, Barack Obama. We cannot separate these issues. They're inextricably intertwined. And I want to say to my colleague from Selma, who represents so ably the New South, that our nation is so much better for the struggle in Selma, for the sacrifice, and not just in those who are famous like Dr. King or John Lewis, but I met at her side Ms. Boykin, a 105-year-old woman who walked across that bridge that day, just in this Capitol less than 20 days ago. And I want to thank her for her leadership on this issue and thank her as we celebrate and commemorate these 50 years and as we dedicate ourselves to fight for the right to vote for every single American without equivocation or compromise. Thank you, and I yield back.
Gentleman from Pennsylvania yields back the balance of his time. Gentlewoman from Alabama reserves. Gentleman from Michigan continues to reserve. Gentlewoman from Alabama is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I yield myself as such time as I may consume.
The gentlewoman from Alabama is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, voting is the most fundamental right that we share as Americans. The foot soldiers who dared to march across the Edmund Pettus Bridge in the face of extreme racial hostility did so in the spirit of equality. We should never forget the sacrifices they made so that this nation could live up to the ideals of equality and justice for all. While we can never repay these foot soldiers for the sacrifices that they made, we can offer a down payment by continuing to fight against injustice wherever it exists. For as Dr. King so eloquently noted, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. May we be moved by the valor and determination of these foot soldiers to stomp out modern-day inequities in the name of justice. The foot soldiers of the voting rights movement set forth a powerful precedent for all of us to follow. Whenever the rights of any one man has been denied, the rights of all are in danger. The price of freedom, as said before, is not free. The foot soldiers paid the ultimate price to ensure equal voting rights for all Americans. Mr. Speaker, I'm proud that over 300 of my colleagues in Congress, both Democrats and Republicans, have agreed to co-sponsor this bill. And I am proud that my colleague from Alabama, Senator Sessions, and Senator Booker will introduce this bill on the Senate side today. I am humbled by the strong bipartisan support of this bill, and I would like to thank Representative Martha Roby and all of the members of the Alabama delegation for standing with me in support of this bill. Today, I am especially proud to be from Alabama. I invite my colleagues, Republican and Democrat, and all Americans to come to Selma during the first week of March to witness living history. You too can witness living history. The City of Selma, the Jubilee Group, will be doing a host of activities all week long. And of course, the commemorative march itself will be on Sunday, March 8th, as well as our president will be speaking to us in Selma on March 7th. I urge all of my colleagues to vote in favor of H.R. 431. I believe that bestowing the Congressional Gold Medal to the foot soldiers of the voting rights movement is a strong reminder of the power of ordinary Americans to collectively achieve extraordinary social change. I want to again thank the gentleman from Michigan for sharing with me this wonderful 40 minutes of debate. I want you to know that it is one of the highlights of my life to have the opportunity to bestow this Congressional Gold Medal to the foot soldiers of the voting rights movement. And as a proud daughter of Selma and the representative of Selma, Montgomery, and Birmingham, and Tuscaloosa, I want you to know that those of us who are the direct beneficiaries of the movement, black and white, we owe a debt of gratitude that we can never repay. But today goes a long way at acknowledging those unsung and noted heroes like John Lewis. But there are so many that are in our midst, in our communities, that gave that sacrifice. And today we honor them, the foot soldiers of the voting rights movement. I want to say again to all of my colleagues, I hope that you will take seriously this bill and what its significance is to America. I want to thank the gentleman from Michigan for sharing this time with me, and I want to thank the leadership of both parties for putting this bill on the floor in such a timely manner so that we can get it on the President's desk before the March 7th and 8th. Wonderful, wonderful celebrations. Again, I thank all of you for being here, and I urge my colleagues to vote yes on H.R. 431.